Are you ready to explore the unknown? Dive into the world of the strange, mysterious, and unexplained with Eerie Expeditions magazine. Each issue is packed with spine-tingling tales, cutting-edge paranormal investigations, and exclusive insights into hauntings, cryptids, UFOs, and more. For a seasoned investor or love a good ghost story, Eerie Expeditions magazine has something for you. Join our growing community of truth seekers and adventure lovers. Subscribe today at EerieExpeditionsMagazine.com and unlock secrets of the supernatural. Are you ready? That's EerieExpeditionsMagazine.com, where the extraordinary is just a click away. Dare to discover.
Tune in to UFO Undercover, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, with your host, Joe Montaldo, right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
What's out there? What creates the shadows in the corners or the creatures of the dark? Who are those on the other side? What do they have to say? This is the Gateway Podcast. This is not your normal style of paranormal talk radio. Brought to you live from United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM New Orleans.
Welcome to this Gateway Podcast, broadcast live from United Public Radio, 107.7 FM New Orleans. I'm your host, C.L. Thomas. How are you guys all doing out there? You were just listening to Sean Kelly with his show Into the Night, and he's always got something great to talk about, doesn't he? Well, hello again from Las Vegas. Currently, the weather is chilly and cloudy. We have some weather moving in, which is not too often in this town, but it is what it is. It's going to get a little bit cold tonight. The guest that we had before, just, to Sean Kelly, he had a topic about spirituality and the paranormal. It's a great topic for me. So much of the paranormal is a spiritual journey, and it's not a guise just to get a buck or anything like that from a TV show. It's actually a spiritual journey for me. So for me, I'm a little different. I don't really subscribe to a lot of the TV shows and things like that. Because of this, I've been kind of backing away from a lot of the paranormal. And I'm looking more for people who are truly gifted. I want to find people who are true light workers and real healers and, not under a guise of like a TV show or anything like that. If you hear a noise, that's my dog. And I'll tell you about her in just a second. She's kind of having some problems today. But anywho, where was I after my dog? A lot has happened. I kind of got sidetracked. A lot has happened this week. I just got back from San Francisco, and I got to investigate Alcatraz, what a place that is. So I always thought, and I don't know why I thought this, I thought that Al Capone had like a cushiony cell. I don't know. Was it Eastern Penitentiary that he was originally sentenced at, and then they moved him to Alcatraz because of the mob activity? But if you've ever been there, he's got like cushy chairs and all that sort of thing. Some reason I thought that was the case at Alcatraz, and it's totally not the case. So I got to sit in a cell, which is on the second tier, and it's like a 9x9 cell. I can imagine staying there for any amount of time. There was a lot of impressions that I picked up there. I was there to investigate. I got to do some EVP sessions and things like that. But one of the things that happened, I got a lot of really interesting impressions, particularly from Al Capone's cell. And then later that night, and on almost 48 hours later, actually, for 2 nights in a row, I was having memories that weren't even mine. So it's very, very interesting what was happening with that. Remember what I just said about Paracons and in the celebrity-driven stuff and how I'm kind of backing away from that? That's kind of where I was getting at before I got sidetracked with my dog. I have an event that's coming up in Kentucky. It's later this year. the dates. I don't have the dates up here just yet, but it's called a Supernatural Tourism Summit. It's a Paraconn that will only have speakers from haunted locations, including legends and location owners. It's happening at Madison Theater in Covington, Kentucky. And this is something that's never been done. So I really encourage people to come out to this event and hear true stories. It's going to be really, really interesting. They're not letting in they're not letting in the Paraconn celebrities. They're letting in just people who are location owners, people who know about legends. So you're going to hear real stories. It's going to be great. I really highly recommend looking into this. On some other things, I do need to ask a favor, and that is if everyone out there who is listening, could you please send me some healing energy vibes my way for a few people that know me, my personal life. I have a 12-year-old golden. She's going to be 13 in May. She's having some health issues, and it kind of happened all of a sudden. So while I was in San Francisco, she had an incident over the weekend, and I had to rush her to the vet as soon as I got back. And, you know, right now we're just playing it day by day with her. She's on some new meds to try to get her moving again and get her walking. She is home right now. She's resting comfortably. She's actually right next to me in a bed. So that's where we're at with that. But my topic tonight is going to be trauma in the paranormal. I have met some people in the paranormal field that seem to really love paradrama. That's actually not what I'm talking about. But, you know, I'm going to say this anyway. Have you noticed that you don't hear much from some people until like something happens and then they jump all over it? I don't know if you saw the news today. There's a couple people just jumping all over that just for clickbait. And it's like they thrive on drama. I don't get this. They're not happy people. Some people I've actually talked to in the past year, they have to out negative you. So if you tell them something that's going on in your life, they out negative you. It's ridiculous. I know a lot of people are using these tactics for money. I've seen that a lot, but drama is very prevalent in this field anyway. This isn't what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is trauma. That too is prevalent in this field. Everyone in paranormal has something happen to them at some point. My guest tonight, he's been in the field for 40 years. He's a parapsychologist. He's a shamanistic healer. He's a spiritual life coach. And he's been on many paranormal investigations. I cannot wait to talk to him. And he has worked on high-profile cases like the Enfield Demon House, the Lizzie Borden House, Mount Washington, a whole lot. So Thomas Patrick Gormley joins me. Let me get him on here. Thomas, welcome to the show.
How are you? It's just great to finally meet you, my friend. Always
It's nice
heard
to meet you
great things
too.
about you. Yeah.
Thank you. I've heard great things about you too. I'm really excited to have you on the show.
Hopefully, mostly good.
Well, there's a lot good. Joe Block says hello.
How you doing?
I know him. So you've done a lot in the paranormal community and in the field. You've seen a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of good. I've seen a lot of bad. You know, that's part of this field, like you were talking about before. But I think there's purpose behind the trauma. Most people, when they get into this field of the paranormal, a lot of that has to do with childhood traumas that follow them. And if you really look at the odds, they did a study on a bunch of people. It was like 169 people, and they all had trauma, and pretty much 98% of them had a pull and a belief in the paranormal. So it seems to draw people that have trauma into the paranormal. And a lot of people that we deal with have unhealed trauma. You could go either way with trauma. You could go towards the good side of it and heal, or you could go towards the bad side of it and create havoc. And I think that's what happens sometimes in our field. And it's up to us to really recognize that. And for me, you'll never hear me say anything on Facebook or any of those things, or, you know, I've been around a lot of people. I do run events and all, and I like you said, I like to have people at the events that have something to say that is going to help us in this field to go forward. I got my start way back when with Ed and Lorraine Warren, and their whole main practice, you know, when I knew them, was help the living and help the dead, and that's what I do.
So when you got into this field 40 years ago, how exactly did that happen?
Well, I grew up, you know, my whole life I've been an empath, and I didn't know what it was at the time. Back then nobody really knew all that stuff or who to get a hold of at the time. There's not like the information that we have now. And I was about 13, 14. I had an interest in, spooky stuff, and wondering, friends of mine just out of a chance said, let's go see these guys, talk. They're ghost hunters. And I was like, what's that? And we went to go see them at a college. And, I watched, and afterwards you could go backstage and you can meet Ed and Lorraine Warren. And when I got backstage, it was like a sea of people moved out of the way, and Lorraine just came up to me and says, you've been having problems and you want answered. And we just carried on a conversation. And for the next few years before I went off to college, I would go over the house once or twice a year. They would have like events over there on Halloween and show you the stuff they don't show you at the college tour that they would do, more of the exorcisms and things like that. And I learned, from day one not to mess with things you don't understand. So it's a matter of learning over 40 years of trial and error and really seeing how what we perceive as the paranormal and what we perceive as trauma and how they could intertwine.
And how do they get intertwined? It's an interesting topic.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to
So
say.
you could look at things different ways. Our minds and all. Doctors could say they know everything about the brain, but there's part of the consciousness and all that we don't understand. That our minds are strong enough to make us perceive something. And what I found over the years, that if a trauma is bad enough, it can manifest the paranormal in front of you. And I found that in a lot of cases because with my background in psychology and just getting to know people and when things start for them paranormal, what was going on. Like we were talking to a gentleman who started getting his paranormal issues at 7, and it followed him into adulthood. And now his child had their first paranormal happening at 7. It seems to be like a pattern, that familiar trauma that seems to happen at those same ages. It seems to follow. But, that's so many different things that could happen with trauma. There's another point, if you go way back in folklore, they call familiar demons. It's like the little monster that seems to follow you everywhere. And that's what we refer to nowadays as your trauma. So if you were an alcoholic, and the alcohol gets a hold of you, that familiar demon is what you struggle with, and you could create your own demon that way. And if the trauma is enough, it's almost like a poltergeist, with people that go through emotions that they're saying. A lot of times they say young teenage girls when they're going through their change and they have that emotion and they could create things to be like a poltergeist and move on their own. It's the same thing with traumas. The same thing could happen. You can manifest with enough hurt or anything like that to create your own haunting. It's to the point where sometimes your psychological side of things could change too, and it can be misrepresented. If you have enough trauma to the point where you disassociate, some people could mistake that as being possessed too. So there's a lot that goes to that. And if you don't do your due diligence, if you are doing home cases or helping people, you have to weigh that out, because a lot of this stuff could get dangerous if you don't, look at every side of it and the traumas of it, asking the right questions, trying to find out why they got to this point. Is it psychological, or is there actually something paranormal going on? But also, did that trauma create the paranormal? If I heal that trauma, will the paranormal go away? And that's what you have to kind of decide when you're dealing with that. And over the years, I had to learn it, learn and trial and error and things like that. But it's not just the living. It's also the dead. Um, if you die in a car accident and you have unfinished business and you still have trauma, it's the trauma of the car accident and your spirit is still here. and it doesn't know why it's still here. That's the point where me as a shaman, I have to get to the point where I speak to that spirit to hear their story and to heal that trauma to the point where they can make the same decision, to leave if they want, or level up, or whatever it is that happens after we die. They're stuck, just like human spirits. They're stuck in life. They need somebody, to throw the buoy and figure out what's going on and try and point them in the good direction, as opposed to the bad direction I was talking about earlier. So there's two choices. So you could heal from it, or you could let it fester and create, things evil that could happen in your life.
It's an interesting, there's so many different directions we can go with this topic, but immediately I think of, because this happened in my own life, and that's the book Dancing with Demons that I wrote about. It's very much Dancing with Demons. It wasn't so much that it was a demonic oppression. It was more of the stuff that I was creating in my own life, if that makes sense. So it was a lot of series of healing. It was a haunting, but the extent of that haunting was caused by a lot of the stuff that I was going through personally, and if, I don't know, I've had a case before where it was a young girl and her husband, I assume it's her husband, I can't really remember, is a significant other that lived in the home. And she called me up, and this is here in Vegas. She said she had a haunting and she wanted me to come over and help her right away. And I started interviewing them, because that's what I do. I interview everybody to find out what's actually going on before I do anything. And it turns out that the husband, or her significant other, was really into like collecting Nazi stuff. And then I find out that he's very much into like a white supremacist group. He's got a lot of hatred going on. So you put all this together, and yeah, it might not be the drama, with alcohol or anything like that, but it's still that mental thing going on.
It's still a trauma. You're associating a negative time in history, and you're trying to pull that back. It's almost like the unlearned history. We need to learn from history, and you're dragging that history back and giving it power again. Your traumas, if you keep giving them power, they're going to have power over you. Just like we talk about, if something was a real demon, you have power over the demon once you put a name to it. It's the same thing, like I said, alcohol, right? Your alcohol is your demon. And what happens when you overcome it? You admit it. You put a name to it. It's alcohol. I'm an alcoholic. You go through your steps to heal, but you're always going to be an alcoholic. It's always going to be there. But it's a matter of putting it to the side, knowing that, okay, I'm not going to touch it anymore. I've healed, but I've learned that lesson, and the lesson stays there as you level up and you're on your own personal journey. There's people that are going to give you words over the years, but you have to decide for yourself those words that work for you on your own personal journey. And I say this story to a lot of people. It's like smoking. I could tell you to quit smoking, but until you make that decision to quit smoking, I'm just words. So finally, after a while, you'll say, okay, I need to do this. I've had enough people give me the words, and now I'm deciding for myself, for my own journey. And that's the struggle, especially with traumas. And things that create the paranormal to the point where it could get so bad that it creates the appearance of demonic and all that. Until that person that has the trauma wants help and wants to put it away, if they don't want to put it away, we can't help them. I could clear a house, all that, help them and all, but days later, that same behavior is going to bring it all back. So that's why there's difficulty with that. You have to want help. You have to give up your ego almost. You're giving up your ego to heal. And that's what you have to do.
Well, it takes a lot of courage to make those life changes too.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
Nobody ever said it was easy. But, somebody like myself, I stand by the people I try and help, to the point where, just so you know, I'm part of a group that is been in the works for over 20 years. We're finally all bringing this whole group together, and it's a healing group, and it's unprecedented. It's called Wardruna, and there's people from all over the country, and we'll be helping people, throughout the world if they want, through our site. It's to the point where we help people with home cases, but there's also healers, there's also psychologists, there's hypnotherapists, there's actual medical doctors that are part of this group. There's also, to the point, we have a dietitian that could help you with healthy eating with depression. So this is all HIPAA protected, and it's a stage. So if I'm working with somebody, I know they have PTSD, I could pass them on to the psychologist to stay within that group. And then when they heal, they could come back to me and we could work on other stuff. So it's never ending. It's not to the point where you have trauma, here's your pill. Forget about it.
It's something
We
you
don't
really
want
have to work at.
Yeah, we want to do this, and we want to do this right. And myself, my friend Stacia Wills, who's heading this up, and myself, with a lot of really big names in the industry, are all helping out. And we're pretty excited about it. It's spawning a lot of other things on top of that. And I think that's what the paranormal is missing right now, is what we're talking
Yeah,
about today. You need to
absolutely.
heal. And most of us, like you said earlier, that are in this business have unhealed trauma. And that's where you get a lot of this back and forth negative and things like that. It's to the point where people come in with ego, or they come in with, what we look at as running things because they want to get money or anything like that. When you have ego, you're very far away from spirit. It's hard to stay
Yeah,
within spirit if you have ego. And when
it's
ego gets
true.
involved and people feel hurt and all this other stuff, and they don't communicate, you have to communicate, because too many people get mad and then they say something and we only hear one side of the story. And that's where trauma comes in, because you're trying to get people on your side to see your point of view, but that's just, you're alienating a whole nother side. So you have to communicate. For me, I always tell people, if I say something that you don't agree with, I'd be more than happy to have coffee with you or anything like that. I'm not going to talk about it on social media, because I don't think that's the way to do it, because that's where ego comes in. And, if anybody disagrees with that, I don't know what to tell you. But,
You see that so often. We've gotten
yeah,
into, and it's not just a paranormal, it's society in general. You have a
exactly.
disagreement with somebody, and right away they're blasting you on social media
Yeah.
and then they're blocking you,
Yeah.
telling you to get out of their life, blah blah blah. And there's no actual healing involved
No,
with
there's
it
no
anymore.
healing. There's no healing. There's no communication. And
Mm-mm.
that's what we're missing. And I think a lot of it, over the years is building, but I think with COVID and people being home and that lack of communication, you can't really talk to anybody, or if you did talk to somebody, it's just, that fear that set in. And now with that fear, even for me, even when I drive now, people drive differently after COVID too. There's so much crazy stuff going on. But I think that's a shift in our world again. Our world seems to shift every few years, and it just, if we let the negative take over, we can't. That's why our group and what we're doing, and trying to heal people one at a time, if that's what it takes. But again, people have to want to.
Right.
And that's the hardest part. If you don't want to, then it isn't going to happen. So
Well, anyway,
that's
I
the
can
hardest part.
help this group and promote it. I would love to do that.
Oh yeah, I'll
It's
definitely
something I
send
really
you
believe
some
in.
stuff. Our major website's about to go up soon, where you could go to each individual person and see who speaks to you, and they'll help you, and then we'll be able to help you get other help if that's what's needed. Because sometimes it's not always paranormal. The thing is with us, I know there's other groups that do this, but not to the extent that we're doing it. Um, you know, Spiritually, mentally, and physically, those are your three things. If one of them's off, then the other ones are going to be off. And that's where trauma comes in, or that's where your thoughts get away from you. Um, And that's the hard part of reeling that back in to get people right in line. They call them all the chakras and all that, but I'm one to tell you, I love that stuff, but I'm very simple. Again, I help the living and the dead, and I believe that, you know, if you're spiritually, mentally, and physically in line, you're going to be happier. But that's something you have to face on your own journey, face yourself in the mirror, and hopefully the right people, which I believe as a shaman, when somebody comes into your life, they come into your life at the right time for the right reason.
That's right.
And that's why we have to be aware
if
of
they
it.
leave your life, it's the same.
Yeah, and it could be good or bad. There's always a lesson there. I don't believe in coincidence. I think it's a message. You know, I've talked about how my spirit guides are always around me. My ancestors, family members never leave you. Your loved ones never die. They're always around trying to guide you. And sometimes when they're saying, dude, you need to listen, they'll give you that coincidence to make your brain go, okay, I get it now. Or this person in your life that creates some havoc and saying, makes you look at your own self saying, am I really that way? Is that why this person's reacting? And you have to really dig down deep to figure out how to heal yourself. You have to do that self-healing also. And I think in this field, if you don't truly rid yourself of ego or try to heal yourself, it's very hard to do the work and help others if you don't do that for yourself. So it's
I'm gonna
again,
get to,
yeah, it's
I'm gonna
again
get
with if I don't love myself, who the heck else is going to be drawn to me? You know, it's that same thing.
it's a lifelong process, at least for me it
Yeah,
is.
it is.
It's
It's
a lot
going to
of
go
work.
on forever. And I think the greatest parts are when you get to a point where you learn something new and you feel good. You feel like you level up. You learn something new. And I tell people all the time, it's like you're playing a video game and you try so hard to get through level 1 and you finally learn it, right? You get to level 2, but then you die and they send you back to level 1. Guess what? I already know all the ins and outs of level 1. So I'm fighting that battle in life. I'm going back, but I already learned that part of it. So I could get through that level again very quickly because I learned. And that what gets you closer and closer as you go through life. And that's what we have to be aware of. You know, don't repeat the same mistakes because you already learned them. So why are you going back on the level and messing up again when you already know what that level is?
When you have these cases, I wanted to ask you particularly about the Ensfield.
Mm-hmm.
Am I saying that Ensfield?
Enfield, yeah, Enfield Demon House, yep.
Yeah. What was
So,
going on there? You said you had a case there. How did you use these same tactics for the spirits in that house?
I always use the same tactics, but it comes down to learning who lives there, the family, their dynamic, and what they're putting into the house. You know, I stayed at the house for a week with another, you know, shaman, and we really took in the house. But the demonic side of that house really was solved years before, but there were some issues going on where they thought it might be waking back up again. So we wanted to go and take a look and really take a look at the land too, because this area was by the Connecticut River, which used to be Indian land. And us as shamans, you know, with a couple other people that are well versed, we did a shamanic blessing of to our ancestors on the land, and I think that helped out a lot. But you know, I think with this case, really, it's one of those they need to help themselves to get forward, and I know they will sooner or later. I'm not part of that case anymore, but you know, I always pray for people to make sure they keep going forward and learning, and I hope they do that.
Got it. So when you do have a case like that, and what if it is the spirits in the house and not so much the people of the house? Is it kind of like you're trying to wake them up?
I don't, you know, when I go into a house, just so people know, when you do this stuff, when I consult people, my last resort is an investigation. I don't want to have to investigate because that's the part that You could be waking something up. Unless you have the gift of discernment, it's not something you should be going in and weekend warrioring, because you could open up something that you can't close. You open Pandora's box and you don't know what you're dealing with. That's a cause for trouble. I am not I like all the instrumentation and things like that. The only thing I want to use is something where I could communicate back and forth on top of what I'm feeling as a shaman. I just want verification. I use instrumentation for verification, almost to the point where I use an SLS camera, because if I'm talking to a spirit, I want to make sure my back isn't to him. If I could pick it up, that's all I need it for. I just want to know who I'm facing, and I want to give them the same courtesy as I give somebody that's living. Everybody deserves that, and you have to approach with proper intention. With proper intention, and you show that, you're going to get more from the spirit than somebody coming in gung-ho or for the wrong intention. So the spirits know when you have the right intention. You go in, you just want to get evidence and throw it up on YouTube and all that, but you have to make the decision when you help on these home cases. If you want to go to a place and pay to play and do all that stuff, that's great. All right, that's what the facility is probably going to do. But if you're helping a home, you have to help the living and heal them, or wherever they have to do to understand what's going on and have control over it. Or the dead. You got to help the dead if they're stuck, if they don't want to be there anymore. You have to learn how to, cross them over in the proper way. And I don't mean you're just going to cross everybody over. Not everybody wants to leave. All right. So it's a matter of finding out who's stuck and who wants to leave, to the point where over the years, my spirit guides will say to the other spirit, if you don't want to be here anymore, just call his name. And through the ITC device, you'll hear my name, Tom. And then I'll go to work. And it's just so your listeners know, with trauma and all that, when it holds them back, everybody says, oh, go to the light. Well, what is the light? What is that light? And each individual person has a different type of light. And it isn't light. What it is if I'm in trauma and I'm trying to help somebody leave, and I figure out, okay, what's holding them back? We had a woman who couldn't find her children. So how do I get them back together? I say to her, I want you to picture in your mind, as I'm talking to you, I want you to picture the greatest moment you ever had with your children together. Can you do that? And they do that, and guess what happens? I see them. Thank you, we can leave now. And that's what you do. That's how you help spirit. It's even to the point where we help the spirit. I asked her, what was your favorite thing in life? Oh, I love daisies. I want you to picture yourself in a field of daisies. And they say, oh, I see it. Oh, I see it. Right after that. And they're off. And you feel the energy leave. I think people have to relook at how they help spirit. Trying to make everybody leave just because they're in a house. That's not what it is. People have to want help. Again, I talked about the cigarette thing. The spirits are the same way. You have to give them the words. It's up to them. They have free will still, is the theory. If they want to leave, they'll leave. But sometimes you have to give them the words that's going to help them because they want help. That's going to cut the ties between their trauma that's holding them. Because in the shaman world, we believe trauma is that dark shadow figure. Some people go to these institutions. I forget which institution it was, where there was a boy that was killed. And he was murdered by a couple other people that were in this hospital with him. And every time people would see him, they would see a shadow figure nearby. And the boy felt like he couldn't leave. And I think that shadow was his trauma, that they couldn't cut the cord. They're there together. When you die in the shaman world, you die pure. But if you have trauma, that darkness holds you back, and it'll show. I had a case where a gentleman was said to, and we all picked up on this gentleman, a lot of psychics that came in, and the gentleman was bludgeoned to death while he was intoxicated. So he's lost, and it's hard because he's still consciously in that mode of intoxication. So that's his trauma. So we had an SLS camera going. We had a person sitting down doing the Estes method. the headphones, the white noise, and hearing it come through when you're in meditation. So we're asking questions, and every time I'm asking the question, you could see on the SLS camera, the person sitting, the spirit pops up, and she starts communicating. We're communicating back and forth. I want to leave, help me. So we try to help them, but then all of a sudden another figure pops up, and the figure starts swearing at us. Not the shadow one, but the one that was asking for help. Like it realized, oh, my trauma's here. I better pretend to be somebody else, that I don't want to get out of here. And it was that constant battle. And you could see it unfolding on the SLS camera. And we had a group of people. There was about 20 people watching this at the moment. It was an event. And we were just trying to help the spirit. This is a place I go back to quite a bit because I'm still trying to help this gentleman. It's difficult. It doesn't happen in one day. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. So it all depends. It's just like us. Some people have to go to therapy for years, and some people after a couple of times realize, oh, okay. So it's the same thing. Your meat suit's gone, but you still have that, in theory, that same consciousness or whatever's holding you back.
I've had a case one time where the person, you could hear it clear as day on the recorder speak back when I asked, why won't you cross over? And he said, judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're coming out of that period of, I forget when they were teaching those tent revival, you're going to hell series, that was like really prevalent not too long ago. But how do you deal with a case like that?
I've dealt with cases like that. You could come to the point where the other thing that I do, I'm known not only with paranormal, but with true crime. I'm a former criminal behaviorist. Now in my retirement from that, I profile historic serial killers. I'm on a Monday podcast all the time talking about serial killers, murderers, and supernatural. But it's the same thing, somebody that kills and dies, they're worried about judgment. But that comes down to having that conversation with them, just like anybody else. Everybody has free will. Everybody has the ability with their consciousness to make amends. And it's up to you as talking to spirit to help them make amends and to know that, they could pass on, they have free will anytime they want without judgment. And that's what we have to get them to. It's just like talking to anybody else, living or dead. You have to be able to do that, but it's a conversation that has to happen. Too many people rush through investigations and don't take the time to have that conversation. It may not happen on the first day, but you have to keep going at it because you have the responsibility, because you have had that conversation and they could see you or you could see them or whatever, to give them everything you have to help because they wanted to help. So don't give up on helping people. You have to do it.
So we're going to cut to the comments real quick. Joe Fox says, hello. Pittsburgh Paranormal Society, that's Sean Kelly. He's a great guy. He's the host on the show Into the Night right before mine. Andy Waters.
If he's in Pittsburgh, that's great. My brother lives in Wexford, just outside of Pittsburgh, so that's exciting.
I grew up in Pittsburgh.
There soon. I'll be there soon. I do a lot of, we go to a lot of events. I know we talked about it earlier, but I'm not one of those either. If somebody wants me to be on a show, if it's for the right reasons, that's fine. But I'm not one of those that feels the need to. I've been doing this for a long time. I've always helped the living and the dead. That's all I worry about. If I could help somebody sleep after 2 years, that's worth more than anything that anybody could hand me or put me on a screen or anything like that. That's what I think it's all about. And the group I work with, with the Wardruna, with Joe Frankie and Johnny Zaffis and all of us, the old farts that are still doing this after all these years, we still believe that we have to help the living and the dead. That's it.
So I don't really know those guys that much, Joe Frankie and all those guys you just mentioned. I do know Wardruna. What's her name?
Stacia Wills. Yeah.
Yes. I have.
I think the Cleveland area. Yeah.
Yeah, I think she was supposed to be a guest at some point on the show here, or she may have been a guest. I can't really remember.
Her and I are what a lot of people, when they see us together, we were twins in a past life. So we're very attached at the hip. What you're hearing from me, you'll probably hear from her. So that's it. We're on the same page, and we've done a lot of work together. Actually, just before I got on your podcast, myself, Stacia, Joe Frankie, and Father Bob Bailey were consulting on a case and all that. I had to get off so I could get on your podcast. So I'm going to have to catch up with that case. But we do consult on cases all over the country and even internationally if it was called for. We still have Joe Frankie, just so you know, he works side by side with the Warrens for 40 years, you know, and Father Bob Bailey, of course, he's been doing this for a long time. And Stacia, of course, I think it's a matter of we give people the best we could give them and put these groups together, the four of us, other people out west like Father Ken Torres. You know, there's a lot of people we work with and consult with and able to help people, you know, again, heal from, you know, the trauma that creates these paranormal issues and us being able to discern what's really going on to help people.
I had Taurus on the show before too. He's a great guy.
Yeah,
He's really
he's great.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll be seeing him pretty soon. So we like to talk and make fun of each other all the time.
I think
we have that group of just sarcastic with each other because it's all out of love. And I think, you know, it's hard in this industry to really find people that are on the same page and have that care for each other. You know, I have, you know, a little circle of friends like those guys, you know, my friendly people I like to call the Salem 8. There's 8 of us that get together at a Paraconn that I run in Salem every year. And we get together and we just sit there at the table and just exchange ideas like it should be like the old days. You know, when
we
you could
really
get a group
lost a lot. We've lost
Yeah.
a lot with paranormal.
Yeah, because I remember the days where we'd be over at an event at the Warrens and they'd sit around the kitchen table and just throw ideas around. And, you know, the tradition kept up, but I don't know where it ended. You know, it's that same thing. It's almost like, you know, a lot of families don't eat dinner together anymore. And that's where a lot of problems happen. And I think we should start eating dinner together again and sitting down and exchanging ideas because the paranormal, you're never going to be 100% right or wrong about it. There's theories. And if somebody gets mad at you, I don't get mad at anybody. If you're trying to do the work and all that, and you're trying stuff to try and come up with theories, all the power to you and all that, because I want people to learn. And sometimes you got to learn on your own. You got to make your own mistakes to level up, like I talked about, and learn. And that's why you get to talk, like I'm talking to you today, and I'm learning something probably from you. But hopefully you're learning something from me, people watching. That's what it's about. When people watch these podcasts, you know, and we're giving that topic, and they could come to the point where they face themselves, yeah, I really need to sit down with people and communicate and have the ideas and help me formulate my own theories and grow. And that way I know in the future I could help people, you know, just from what I learned from everybody, but it's still my own journey that I have to do.
Well, I think one of the things we've lost is a lot of people aren't interested in doing house calls anymore. I don't
You know,
hear a lot of people talking about cases anymore.
they're
Instead,
very difficult.
right. They go to like you said, they go out for a weekend at one of these locations to do an investigation at one of these famous locations just as an event.
Yeah.
Or they go to a Paraconn and that's the extent of it.
Yeah.
You know, we're really not focusing anymore on house calls. Well, the paranormal community really isn't focused on that anymore.
Yeah, and that's too bad, but it's not for the faint of heart. You know, you really should have, you know, there's no such thing as an expert, but I mean, just have the experience. You know, you do your good, you do your bad, you got to learn from it. But, you know, not everybody was perfect at home cases, but you do enough of them, you see where to change and to help and all that. And, you know, I learned a long time ago that I have to go with people and learn from the people that have have the experience. And then I learn from them and I start my own journey, and then I learn, and that's what's happening. There's nobody teaching anymore. Everybody wants to be famous. They want to do this, they want to do that, but nobody's just getting together and saying, okay, let's go together. Let me show you something. How does that help you? Or what do you have? Even though you could be on your first day in the paranormal and you might have an idea that I never thought about. So nobody's better than anybody else. We're all in this to hopefully do the work and figure out what's going on, or how to help the living, how to help the dead. So that's all you need to do. All the other stuff is great, but that's really what it comes down to if you simplify it. That's the reason that I'm in the paranormal. I can't say it's the same for everybody, but I won't knock anybody. But if you're doing the work, I'm proud of you. So that's all I got to say. If you're not doing the work, I don't know why you're still doing this. So I'll put it that way.
Well, there's a lot of reasons why people are doing it, unfortunately. I wanted to ask you, when you worked with the Warrens, how did they work with the spirit world
now,
and helping the spirits with past trauma?
Okay, so when I knew Ed and Lorraine, I would go to the house. I was just too young at the time to go on investigation, so I really didn't get that side of it. But when they would do their talks, you could really see how, I think, respecting both sides and all that is what it takes. Too many people nowadays, they don't respect the dead. They, like I said, they just want to film some evidence and all that. But you really have to look at it this way. Some of us that can feel and all that, we're like a beacon of light. We're the candle in the darkness. And there's some spirits that are lost and all that, and they may not want to be here anymore. But then they see you and there's like, oh, they're able to see me. They could talk to me. But yet you go to this house, you just film them and leave and never do anything for the spirit. How angry would that make you if you've been waiting 500 years of our time, because they don't have time. They don't have watches on the other side, is the theory. If somebody pull the rug out from under you thinking you're about to have somebody help you, when they pull the rug out from under you and you get angry, that's what happens at some of these home cases where they're helping the family and they're like, oh yeah, we got our evidence. Yeah, don't worry about it. They'll just tell them to go away and, that type of thing, because they got their stuff they're going to throw on YouTube, but then they didn't help the spirit. Now the spirit's even angrier, and they're creating more havoc at this house. And I've seen it a lot. I've gone to cases where I was their last resort and I saw what it was. But the only problem is when you have so many investigators go into a home over and over again, they leave their own imprint on it.
I was just going to ask you that.
So now you have to dig through their energy to find the real root of it. You don't want it to become an onion where you got to peel it back. Why, yeah.
Is that kind of what happened with the Lizzie Borden house?
Yeah, I think with Lizzie, there's a lot of energy in there, but that comes down to discernment too, when dealing with it. When I did the investigation there was more experienced people in doing the investigation. And we were again doing an Estes method, and, Andrew Borden's spirit came through as I was talking, and I tried to get him to maybe admit of maybe he had abused his daughters when they were growing up, and the reason why that occurred, they got mad enough to, take out their father and their stepmother. But as I'm talking to him, I'm trying to ask him respectfully, did this what happened? But I felt the spirit become angry because I could feel, if you've ever had a spirit walk through you, it feels like cobwebs, that like you could feel like electricity, and it feels like cobwebs. I could feel the cobwebs on my face, and my heart rate went up and I started sweating, and I could have this conversation with Andrew Borden as I believed I felt the spirit going back and forth. And when he finally decided to leave, probably angrily because I was trying to, get him to communicate with me and let me know what was going on. Of course, they won't tell you anything there. And once he left, my heart rate went back down. I stopped sweating. So it's just one of those moments that I'll never forget. Was it scary? A little bit. I didn't know the capacity, because I really don't think a spirit could take your life. I think to the point where that trauma in spirits over and over and over again, over time, might make you sick. Like I said, if your spiritual, mental, and physical's off, one of them's going to suffer. So, and there's been cases where I've known investigators to go in, and they were so affected by it, they gained medical issues. That's what could take you. It's not the spirit, it's the over and over and the trauma of it. Because you could have trauma with the paranormal too. Paranormal could create your own trauma if you don't deal with it properly. So if something is coming at you and you're doing these investigations over and over again without grounding yourself and protecting yourself, over time, that spiritual energy or whatever is coming through is going to build on you, and it's going to create havoc. And it could take you out of it spiritually, take you out of it mentally, create physical problems, any of those things. It wants to make those off on you. So it
And
wants to create that torment.
a lot of people don't believe in that, but if you're dealing with energy and your body is energy, and then you have that energy force, that angry energy force, particularly like coming against you or at you all the time like that, it makes sense that, I'm not saying that the paranormal can cause cancer, but actually it can in a way. The stress of it can.
Yep. Some people believe that, you could become sick spiritually. And that's where somebody like myself as a shaman, if I could see that you're actually sick spiritually, that's the way to counsel you and to cure you, when I could help you spiritually. Any of those things that are off, sometimes that's what it is. But yeah, mentally, I could help you as a shaman, but ultimately you should get, mental health help. If you have PTSD or anything like that, that's where the Wardruna thing that I do, we determine, okay, this is beyond my purview. Let's set them up with this person so we could continue their health track to get them in line so they don't have long lasting issues, or be able to heal and have a better life, and hopefully that will happen.
Do you believe that it's better to be spiritually grounded and to kind of heal yourself now before you cross over? I know the Monroe Institute strongly believes that.
Well, I think with anything, we should constantly work on ourselves, and we should make peace with us. If you make peace with yourself, then everything around you will be peaceful. So that's really what it is. I don't want to get too religious, but a lot of people look at it, the Catholics, Jesus died for our sins, but he died for us individually, where we could take him on. So basically saying, if you're going to live the life in the Bible as they say Jesus was, you have to live it individually. So you have to make those sacrifices in life to make, the better decisions, to heal. He healed others, but it's also symbolism to heal yourself, and move on in life has, if you believe that, to move on that way. Me, I'm very diverse because I do help so many different families, and the energy that gets put off may not be the Catholic, or they might be a Jewish home, or it might be, something else, some esoterically diverse type of situation. If I don't know all that stuff to discern what's going on, because that's part of their energy, that might be what manifested that paranormal issue. And I have to understand that to be able to help them,
Have you ever come across spirits that weren't human, and how do you deal with that? And I'm not talking like demonic energy necessarily, but more like I know out here in the desert, we come across like Native American elementals and shapeshifter things a lot. It's a lot more than I originally thought before moving out here. Do you deal with things like that?
I've dealt with that. The land spirits, anything elementals. It's a different it's a different thing. I think it's more to deal with an elemental. It's respect of nature and land and what they're on. That's what they're protecting. The Native Americans, where they put that stuff, it's a protection of the land, to do the right by the land, you know, to the point where when I go out and mow my lawn, everything has frequency and energy, even the trees, the grass, it's nature. Animals, anything, have respect for it. I ask permission to mow the lawn because I know I'm about to cut something. You know, I ask permission of whatever's there, elemental, good elementals, there's bad elementals and all that. It's just asking permission. It's the same thing at a house. You know, people that are living their spirits, they always go to say, if you make renovations, it seems to bring up the spiritual activity. But if you ask permission, hey, I'm going to make the house look nicer. That's all anything wants. Anything with energy wants, you know, don't tread on my property without asking permission. People just want communication and permission and all that. And I think that helps with those types of things. Easier said than done. It all depends on some of these elementals and what the people on that land did. But you're talking hundreds of years of sometimes of untrust to us as human beings and what we possibly did to the Native Americans. And that's the battle. But being a shaman and all that, and recognizing that, but you know, shamans aren't just Indians, it's indigenous all over the world. Shamans really started in Siberia and Russia. That's where it all really started, and it just expounded from there. There's different types of ways to look at it, and shamanism isn't really a religion. It's your own self journey, and your spirit guides or anything that's around you. You're chosen to do the work, and it will knock on your door over and over again to the point where it'll make you sick until you accept who you are. And that's the journey you go through. It's not easy. You have to die from you have your death. We call it the death of ego and all that. You have to go through your spiritual journeys, and people talk about, to the point where I've been through it so much. It's like, if I meditate, I could get to that point without, you know, doing a medical merit, you know, like a smoking the peace pipe, some people say, or taking the mushrooms and anything. You get to the point where you could put yourself into that situation, because as a shaman and with trauma, people got to realize, when you have trauma, let's say, God forbid, somebody was molested when they were younger, they grow up and they keep, you know, dating the same person that created that issue to them growing up, because that part of their soul was taken at a young age and they've never seen it. It's off to the side. As a shaman, you know, they call it, you know, soul retrieval, where you
The
have to go in and
fragmentation.
recognize, yeah, you got to recognize what
Mhm.
that trauma was and what's missing. And you have to heal that to the point where they start loving themselves again and not letting that trauma, by dating the same guy over and over again, or the same woman over and over again in that type of situation, or, you know, with anything. Most people, when they become alcoholics, it's they grasp onto it because they're trying to pour the alcohol into that missing part of their soul. What is that part of the soul that needs healing, or where do I need to jump in and retrieve? So, and that's where that type of healing comes in too.
So changing the topic just a little bit,
Mhm.
I know we're running out of time, but I really wanted to ask you. I know you said that you are a behavioral analyst.
When I was in the state of Florida, I worked at a corrections institute, at a psychiatric institute, and you know, it's a criminal behaviorist, where we kind of learn, you know, the psychology, the criminal mind, of course, but a lot of it had to do with crisis management and learning all the inmates. So if something went down there, we had to profile, you know, like if they had medical records, anything of certain things that they've done at any time. So if something goes off in that region, we know how we're going to deal with it, and how to stop what's going on in theory. You know, if you kind of have that pattern of what they do. Again, I talk about it even with serial killers, the traumas they go through and how they grow up. If you can know all that stuff, after they've been captured, you could figure out a lot of things, but trying to find them, there's patterns of people that do these things. but finding out the fingerprint and why is the most difficult part. That's the chase. I really believe that true crime and what I do and the paranormal are almost the same things. I'm dealing with trauma, why people do what they do, and why is this case creating paranormal because of this, and I got to look at all these little parts. It's a big puzzle, and I got to find all the pieces to put it together. It's not easy, and I think, like you said before, that's why a lot of people don't want to do home cases anymore, because a lot of people they can't solve them. So.
Well, you don't even have to do that at just home cases. I know some places out here, out in the ghost towns, that have paranormal activity, that there's a lot of drama surrounding that. You think about some of these ghost towns like Goldfield and how rough it was. A lot of people retreated to these places just to run away from the law and do things. So there's a lot of unraveling that could happen at these places.
Well, exactly. Like we were talking about before, when you open these places to people coming in and investigating, you get all those different energies of people coming in and what they leave behind. I've talked about this before. If you investigate a place over and over and over and over and over again, sooner or later you could leave that place and say, let's go back to that place 5 years later. And then something comes in the evening, wow, that sounds like so-and-so. You could have left enough energy there to haunt yourself 5 years later. So those are the things you have to discern of that energy that you leave there, that frequency that you leave there. So when a lot of these places are investigated over and over again, it's very difficult to get to the root of the traditional problem that started there to begin with. So, and it's hard to discern. Yes, do those places need a lot of help? Yes. And there are spirits there that want to leave? Yes. But I've run into a lot of issues with some of these places. They don't invite me because they know what I do. If a spirit wants to leave, I'm going to help them leave. They don't want me to make them leave. It's almost like they're keeping them captive so they could keep making money to have people come in.
That's so bizarre to me. I hate that. I hate hearing that kind of stuff.
I've been almost kicked out of places. They tell me, you know what? It's not up to you. It's up to the spirit, and I'm going to give them help. And if you want to kick me out, go right ahead. So
how nice for them. They have a pet spirit, locked up in the.
Yeah, I don't believe that. But usually I tell the spirit, I'll invite something that needs help. I says, you could leave this place. You have free will. You could come with me and we could talk. So, and I'll help them make the decision to leave or not. So, but I understand that. I'm not saying anybody should do it, because if you don't understand the energies and all that after, I'm not saying the greatest at it, but it's just, I've done it so much. To me, it's, it's like anything else. If you get good at it and all that, and you're helping, then yeah, I want to continue to do it the right way.
So we're running a few minutes over, but I still wanted to ask you another question because it's just so interesting. When you're dealing with an investigator that has been investigating a lot, and maybe they pick up some attachments because maybe they're not, I don't know, for whatever reason, they have an attachment that everywhere they go, they seem to collect evidence and they're able to showcase evidence on TV, whatever. I'm not talking about a particular person, but I have heard of this, where a person is just able to pick up activity no matter where they go. Can it be them and not?
Well, it could be unhealed traumas like we talked about. When you're unhealed and you put yourself in those situations for more energy and all that, or more frequency to attach to you, yeah, that could possibly happen. Like I said before, it can make you physically ill, or it could affect you mentally or spiritually. It's the same thing. If you don't protect yourself properly and learn how to do that properly by grounding or, calling on your spirit guides to circle around you, or on your higher power, whatever that is, or call on the Archangel Michael, whatever way that puts you in the right intention. If you go in with the right intention, I think usually 98% of the time you'll leave safe. I'm never going to say it's perfect, but you're more safe that way. If you go in with the wrong intention, you got to understand. I look at it this way. If I have the flu and somebody wants me to come out and investigate, I'm not going out until don't have the flu anymore, because I'm leaving myself vulnerable. If I got into, like, let's just say you're having a spat with a loved one and you got really angry and all that, and you haven't gotten over it yet. Don't go on an investigation. You're opening yourself up. You're leaving yourself vulnerable. So you have to ground, you have to be at strength spiritually before you go in and do these things, because it could go home with you. And that's what I think.
Stone Hobbit asks, how are orbs connected, and are they guardians?
I'm not a big orb person, so it's very rare. But the theory is orbs are things trying to manifest and all that. So I think it's like the beginning. It's types of energy when it really is something. Are they guardians? They could be. When something's around you all the time, it could be trying to manifest, or like I said, I don't believe in coincidence. It might be trying to tell you something. So yeah, they could be guardians. They could be other things too, but it all depends on how they appear. So.
Well, Thomas, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
Appreciate you having me.
Do you have any projects coming up, and where can people find you?
I'm on Facebook, Thomas Patrick Gormley, Archangel the Paranormal on Instagram and TikTok. I do a lot of stuff. I am the shaman of the Shaman and the Showman LLC. We're an events group, so we do the Connecticut Paranormal and True Crime Conference that's coming up in July. We do the Witch Trials Festival in Connecticut. We also do the Salem Paraconn Horror Festival. That's usually in November. So we do a lot of events where we take people to investigate with us at places that aren't investigated a lot. So it gives them an opportunity to get a fresh experience, but learn the right way. We do psychic events pretty much every season. Like we have a summer one, a spring one, a fall one, and a winter one. And we have some of the best psychic mediums in the business and healers to help people that come and want to see them. But there's always events going on like that in the Wardruna. We have that going on. There is stuff that I do with, like I said, Joe Frankie, Father Bob, Bailey, and all that. There's a group of us that consult on cases throughout the country just to determine if it's something that needs to be looked at further. So I got so many projects going on. I don't know what to do with myself sometimes, but I'm just glad that, I'm able to talk to you today. And hopefully, what we talked about, I know not everybody that's listening has to believe what I say. I always say this. Hopefully what I said might move somebody to help them on their own journey. And I think that's all I need to do. So,
that's all that matters, is if you heard something that you can take with you,
yep.
Take it with you. If not, leave it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I appreciate the platform to be able to talk about this topic. It's been a little bit since I got down to the nitty gritty with people like that. So
we could definitely take up 2 hours.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
You've been listening to The Gateway, your portal to the unexplained, the mystical, and otherworldly, broadcast live from United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM New Orleans. I don't have my calendar out, so I can't tell you who's coming up next week, but stay tuned for next week, and I will talk to you all soon. Thank you guys so much for listening.